Master Cheeks and his adventures to get laid. Gordon.
He finally did it.
He finally did it. He finally got laid. He finally lost his virginity.
Or so we believe. I mean,
Yeah, we
who
don't
knows?
know.
Maybe there was just some light petting.
Like maybe they just cuddled all night.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, maybe they did an avatar thing and their tails connected.
Yeah, they do have that weird like little touchy thing going on.
They do. They really do. But Gordon, the season is completely over. We've seen
It
all
is.
9 episodes.
Well, 9. Yep.
It was a long season.
Better or worse?
We saw Master Chief take off his helmet, take off his armor.
We saw a lot of people take off their helmets too many
A lot of
times.
people. And then we saw him get naked and have relations with another person.
Oh yeah.
Did you, going into the show, did you think Master Chief was going to have sex?
No.
No.
Yeah, I didn't really think it was. I guess I don't know. I didn't really have too many preconceived notions because I tried not to get myself too set my expectations too high.
Right. Right.
So I sort of just went in with what I'd seen in the trailer, which didn't really give you that much. I don't know what I expected, but yeah, this little Master Chief, McKee. Is it McKee?
Yeah, Mackie.
Mackie, whatever it is.
I think Mackie or McKee. It's something.
That part sort of that was a little surprising to me. I guess right when I saw her in the trailer, I should have put two and two together. But
well, from a stand back point, kind of taking your hands off of the of like not so much of like stepping back and say, well, this isn't Halo, because there are a lot of elements of Halo in the show, but when you kind of take a step back and go, they took the world of Halo and they're building a show in that world and creating its own universe essentially.
Yeah.
A lot of the storytelling that they did makes sense. Some of it doesn't. And so when I went in with that point of view, I was enjoying a lot of the show. I mean, the show's not amazing, right?
Yeah.
But
right.
It's enjoyable. I was excited to tune in every week, and I think that's probably the biggest hurdle for people, because I think a lot of people want to have basically what you get in the video game, but just live action.
Yeah, they want the Combat Evolved campaign in TV show format.
Yeah,
live action.
Now I think they could have done that too, though. I think they could have just followed the very closely the main storyline of the games. Maybe added a bunch of characters, changed a couple small things. They could have played it very safe. This was a very unsafe attempt. They definitely tried to make something new here, and I think that deserves some credit.
Yeah, well, they wanted to cater to people other than just the video game fans.
Right. But yeah, so the show's over now. Or I shouldn't say over. The season 1 is finished. Season 2 is probably going to come out next year. I know they start filming this summer. They in one of their early press release videos, the actor who plays Master Chief, Pablo Schreiber, made a comment about how they have to film this summer because of a location they're filming, and it has to be cold or something, hinting that they're probably going to be in the mountains, which is probably on the ring.
Assault on the Control Room.
Yeah, hopefully. But what are your overall general consensus on the show? Did you like it? Did you hate it?
I enjoyed it. I mean, I enjoyed it enough that I kept on watching it on a weekly basis, and it didn't feel like I was just watching it so I could finish the season and be like, okay, I watched it. Like it wasn't a chore. but I definitely don't think I was as engaged as I. It's not the Halo story or the Halo show that I was hoping would finally get made. Like
Right.
after all this time, I'm still surprised this is the one that Microsoft decided to go with. Um,
Right.
but I mean, I enjoyed it, and I mean, I'm hoping that season two um, maybe gets a bigger budget, and now that I'm hoping that they can do more of like the Halo like video game type story that we're all accustomed to
Right.
in season two. Now that they've sort of gotten a lot of the emotional like baggage stuff at least out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page with you. Um, there was definitely some elements of the show that I think just did not work. I think they really missed on the Soren and Quan storyline. Um,
Yeah, no idea what that was about.
and I think you could almost tell that, like in post production, that they realized they missed because when like episode what 5, they're not even in it. Um,
Yeah.
6 is I think 6 is all no. They're a little bit in episode 6, but then 7 is when that's like their entire episode.
Hmm.
And when you're watching that, you can kind of feel like there's some chemistry between those two actors, and there's some like conversation pieces that they kind of have that make you think that they had more scenes together
Yeah.
that got cut out, and kind of makes you, at least me, think that like okay, like they kind of almost realize maybe in post production like this story arc is pretty weak. Let's chop it up a little bit, um, which I think is a little bit disappointing because I think they could have done something cool with this, other storyline. I think it just there wasn't really like an end goal for it,
I feel like
and
we didn't really get a payoff.
right,
Like we never got to where that story was trying to go. It didn't feel like.
yeah, like it feels like the whole purpose of watching that story arc is to know that there's a portal from Madrigal to the ring, and
Yeah.
that the monitor of that ring travels back and forth at times for some reason.
Mm.
That's like the important information that we found out.
Yeah.
Which,
It was such a small, like it was like here's your little blip of that information, and then
yeah,
they don't go any further into it. Like it
right,
would have been a
exactly,
cool little thread to follow, but they just didn't. They like showed you the thread and then just like didn't follow it.
yeah. But for the other storyline, like kind of the main storyline, I enjoyed it pretty well. I think there were a couple of times I didn't feel like it really paid off for some of the character arcs, and it just felt like they were very slow in the beginning with their story
Yeah,
arcs, and then they kind of had to rush them to the end, um, and it just
yeah,
didn't feel rewarding for some of the storylines.
I agree. I think the writing was a little. Wasn't a huge fan of the writing. Like I feel like some stuff just existed, so they could like make a point, or so they could make something happen. Like especially in that final episode, like when Cortana takes over the chief and then flies the Pelican down, and the Pelican's like doing gun runs and killing all the elites and stuff. It's like, well, why wasn't she doing that with the Pelican the whole time? Even when she like,
Yeah,
why wasn't she providing air support the entire time? Like, why did it take that happening? And I mean,
what
it.
was yeah, and so I do want to dive into that a little bit more, um, but I do want to also mention like one of my favorite story arcs was actually Kai the Spartan, her
Yeah,
story arc. I thought that was one that paid off pretty well, and I thought like the Keys and Dr. Halsey's storylines played pretty well.
yeah,
Um, but I felt like one that was really missed and that was a little bit disappointing was Cortana's, um, because uh, there at the end when she tells John that she doesn't, the reason why she like chose to help him and not want to take control of him anymore because that she saw the humanity in him.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't really show, in my opinion, they didn't really show a lot of examples of that.
Right. No, yeah, they didn't.
But yeah, let's dive into that. So at the end of the episode, Cortana or John essentially chooses to die so Cortana can take over his body so that she
Mm-hmm.
can complete the mission successfully. It was by getting the artifact out of there and saving the other Spartans. And
The whole point of that was just because if he touched the artifact, he activated it, right?
well, I think it was. She kind of told him like that he couldn't. Right, he couldn't move the artifact, so he'd have to give up the artifact to save the Spartans, but he may not even be able to save the Spartans. And
Yeah, I felt like that part of the story I never really liked or understood why they decided to go with it. Like he can't touch the artifact without it activating, and like him like going into a crazed lunatic trance.
right. Um, yeah, that was definitely a interest. Like, it's an interesting story arc, and I wonder if that was put in place to get to the moment that we had at the end. Because
Yeah, I mean,
at first I thought it was in place so that when John kind of starts to go a little bit more rogue, that the UNSC has to just agree because he's the only one that can access it.
yeah, he had to be the only one that could access it because if he started acting all crazy and like Halsey would have had him just like killed there from the get go if she didn't really need
Right,
him. But
right.
you had to make him like the key basically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's where I think that's like goes back to where I think the writing was a little shaky at air like points. Like
Yeah,
they didn't set a good foundation for why things had to happen, and then they just made them happen, and then you like were left wondering like, but that doesn't make sense.
right, right. So I guess my question to you is now John essentially dead and the future is just going to be like this Cortana controlling a Spartan type character?
I don't think so. I think yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think there's two things that either going to happen. I guess. I mean, it's possible that she could have given him control after they got back, or like brought him back somehow, right
Yeah.
when they got back up on the ship. Um, or something's going to happen uh, next season. Like they're going to have to go to the ring or something and use some sort of forerunner tech to bring him back or do something, but I mean, I don't think it's going to be very long. If Cortana still has control, I don't think it's going to be. At least I hope. I don't think it's going to be like a season long or a long period of time. Like I would
Yeah.
imagine they're going to give him back control
Yeah.
relatively early if he doesn't already have it.
I actually, so my theory is that Cortana won't be able to get the artifact, or she will try to get the artifact to react to his body and it won't work, and
Yeah,
she'll have to because his body because she's like so she essentially has control of his body. So my
yeah,
theory is that obviously there's no like brain damage or anything going on, but it's just his consciousness is like being blocked out. So I'm gonna make a guess that she finds a way using the artifact to give control back to John. Is my theory.
yeah. I
Because
wonder if they'll end up just to like pay like homage to the video game if they'll like at some part of it they'll need to take like remove Cortana from like his brain and they end up putting her on like the chip that he can then just slide into his helmet or something like that, and that's like
yeah,
part of how they get him back to.
so I understood why they put her in his head because that was actually probably pretty clever writing. so she could always be with him with his helmet off.
Yeah.
But yeah, that could be something they do. But so speaking of season 2, what do you hope the show does differently and go like what are your hopes for season 2? Like a storyline or changes?
I hope we see. I want to see more combat because I feel like we didn't really. I feel like John never really seemed like Master Chief except for like when Cortana took over his body. Like that was the only time he actually acted like the Master Chief that we know in video games. You know.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see more like combat. Hopefully less romance with Master Chief. I hope that they can get some better CGI because you can definitely tell where they spent their money. Like the last episode when they're there on the Covenant planet at that temple place, like it almost looked like it was live action characters in like a cartoon. Like just some of the some of like the pillars and that sort of stuff. Like if you looked at it, it was sort of like this could be like one of those Star Wars cartoons or something, and I almost couldn't tell. And it's kind of funny because like you look at Star Trek Discovery, and I actually looked this up after I saw the finale. Star Trek Discovery's CGI and everything is really well done, and I mean for the most part I would say it's pretty close to movie quality a lot of the time. And I actually looked it up, and their per episode budget is smaller than Halo's per episode budget was.
Do they have like as many CGI intensive scenes?
I mean they're in outer space, and
well, I guess is the
battles all the time.
Just ship battles into space?
No, I mean they're on planets and.
Okay. I mean I haven't seen it, so that's why I'm asking.
There's a lot of time spent like on planets with different species, and there's definitely a lot of CGI in it. And when I've watched it, I've never really noticed like some of the aliens. I'm like, I don't even know if it's a bit like CGI. It's more of like just makeup that I'm like, that's kind of a cheesy looking alien. But I've always thought I've never seen like a CGI scene or anything and thought like, oh wow, that looks really cheap and wonky.
Okay. Because I noticed like in Halo, when it focuses on a character, it looks good. But when when you have the action sequences, is when it starts to look dodgy.
When it's like the fast-paced action scenes, it can look a little funny. But then like you see the Brute, and you can tell they spent like half their CGI budget for that episode on making that one Brute look really good.
Yeah, and do you know who that Brute was?
It was Atriox, wasn't it?
It was Atriox. And that's awesome, but I'm a little disappointed that they didn't make a bigger notion of it. Because when they showed him in episode 5, I was like, that looked like Atriox, but just with like a smaller beard.
I think that just goes to show that they're trying to like make it appeal to the broader audience more. Where like, so it would have taken up valuable screen time for them to go into like, oh, this is Atriox, and this is why you should care that it's Atriox.
Yeah.
So maybe they can do that next season. Now that they've established a lot of the other stuff, they can go into a little bit more of some of these other characters.
So my hope is for season 2, personally, is two things. Because one, I think they will get a bigger budget because I don't know if you saw the earnings report, but last quarter for Paramount they grew. I think it was like 18% in subscribers, which is like a crazy number. And you can just point to Halo and say it was because of Halo. So in my opinion, there's no reason they don't give them a larger budget. But the two things I'm hoping to see is, number one is it's kind of like what you're saying with more action. I don't know if I necessarily need more action. I think I just want to see the Spartans kind of go on a mission for like multiple episodes, like half the
Oh yeah,
season.
I just want to see Spartans doing Spartan things. Like
Right, right.
I think I said this the last time we talked that like other than them being in like the Mjolnir armor, it doesn't really like it doesn't really seem like Halo other when then they talk about like either the ring or you
Right.
see like the Covenant or you see like it doesn't. I feel like what makes Halo Halo has always been like the Master Chief and Cortana like
Yeah.
going off and doing these missions and saving humanity.
Yeah.
Um, so I think I want to see more of that. And
So like I think it'd be cool to have like if Silver Team and Cortana go like on a mission to the ring
yeah,
and they're there and maybe they have like Captain Keys with them, but they're there for like a majority of the episode. Then you have like Halsey and Miranda Keys and like some of those other characters like off the ring. You have like those two storylines that you're following.
yeah. See, I'd like to see like a three quarters, 1/4 split. Like I'd like 3/4 of it to be like Master Chief and Silver Team going and like exploring the ring and
Yeah.
like doing whatever the
Yeah.
overarching story ends up being, and then focus like some of the rest of the episode on some of these like smaller, I would say less important, I guess, but stuff that's more like filler and background.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I agree. And it's kind of weird. Like when you think about season one, I kind of sit there and go, I felt like the first half of the season could have been like an episode shorter. But then I felt like the second half of the season could have been an episode longer.
Yeah, they spent a lot of time. Like I didn't need to be on what Aridness 2 or whatever John's homeworld was.
Yeah.
I didn't need to be there for that long going through. Like I think there was way too much spent of John like going through these little visions and seeing his little younger self run around and discover all these things. Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they could have tied that little story bit up pretty quickly, but they feel like they let that go on for pretty long. I mean, he went through that stuff like multiple episodes.
Yeah, I think to me, it wasn't so much like the length of it. It was just like 3 episodes in a row.
Yeah, like
That it didn't space that out. And
yeah,
so
and I mean,
you kind of got a little tired of it.
yeah. I feel like you just don't have that much time in a what is it, a 9 episode season? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
And you just don't have that much time to be devoting like that much time or like 3 episodes in a row to something like that, which in the grand scheme of things, like it really the payoff isn't that great. Like it's like, oh yeah, there was a place here when he was a kid, and
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I mean,
So, okay. So, like, all in all, like I said, I think we both think it's pretty entertaining, but I think there's definitely some room for improvements. Um,
yeah,
Now, you mentioned Star Trek New World, like it's CGI, but so I'm curious, where do you think this falls as far as like sci-fi media, like TV show, movies? Because I know with like in a video game, I mean, Halo is probably one of the most popular sci-fi video games.
yeah.
Where do you think this show falls in as compared to other shows and movies that fall in this sci-fi realm?
I think as of right now, I would put it at a lower tier. I mean,
Yeah.
there's just so much good sci-fi out there that it's hard to really elevate this to very high on the list when
Yeah.
we just haven't seen that much. I mean, we've got one season, okay, and it's not even like it was. It'd be one thing if it was a Halo season of like a bunch of just Spartan ass kicking firefights and everything, but the story was a little lacking and the CGI was a little lacking. At least for me, the I wasn't getting the Halo story that I wanted. Plus, it had a lot of those other things that were lacking a little bit
Mm-hmm.
from what I was hoping for. So,
Yeah,
um,
I think the biggest thing for me that I felt like it was lacking was they didn't they didn't do a great job world building and setting up this universe of here's the covenant. What do we know about them so far? And they make it seem like, oh well, you should already know what they are, but at the same time of like they took their time going through some other elements that people already knew.
yeah, they sort of approached it from a like they didn't approach the material consistently from like a new to the Halo universe perspective.
Yeah,
Like you jump in, you have no idea who the Covenant are. Why are we fighting the Covenant? Like what's how long has this been going on? Like are we winning? Are we losing? Like
yeah,
you didn't really get any of that. You had no idea what the state of the war. Like you didn't even really feel like you were in a war, to be honest.
right, right,
Um,
exactly. And I think
but
that's
yeah,
so when you think about sci-fi shows and movies and content, that's always a big thing because it's always the big wonder of what makes this sci-fi, and I think that was the big element to me that was missing.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of good sci-fi out there. So it's hard to rank this too high.
Mm-hmm. And you look at Dune. I mean, Dune spent like an hour of their movie just explaining the world.
Hmm.
They could have spent the first episode and a half doing something very similar, and
Yeah.
setting like the scale of it because it just doesn't feel very big. Because like a big question
Hmm.
I had was like, there's only like I think like 30 something Spartan twos at this point, but they don't really mention where where the other ones are.
Yeah, they made it
Um,
seem like Silver Team was they were the only four in the world, and it's like, well, what's going on? Like
right,
they just
and it could easily just be a comment of like, well, the rest of the Spartans are scattered throughout, the um, the universe and other colonies and worlds, and that would have been fine.
fighting stuff. Yeah, they didn't really talk about anything going on anywhere else in the world. Like
Yeah,
were there like were there battles going on in other planets, or were there?
yeah.
You just didn't really know.
All right. Well, Gordon, this was a nice chat, and I think we
Yeah.
really nailed the head on the coffin of what I think a lot of people are probably feeling. I think some people are probably a little bit more um, disappointed with the show because it isn't like we said, it wasn't necessarily the show that a lot of people were expecting. But I don't think
Oh,
that's a bad thing. But I think what they do have
yeah.
it needs some work.
Yeah, they have a foundation, and now we just have to see if they actually can keep building up instead of down or horizontal.
Yeah,
We don't need much more foundation at this point. Like it'd be kind of weird to go back and like lay a foundation for who the Covenant is or about the war at this point. I mean, I'd still like it. Like I think it could be cool if they gave us an episode like maybe we'll see the Arbiter or something and
yeah. That was actually
we'll
something I was hoping for season two was maybe we can get like a very small storyline, but just a few scenes here and there of like the Arbiter or Atriox within
yeah,
the and just kind of showing more of the alien side.
because that'll at least give them opportunity to they can go back and show a little bit more background about the Covenant.
Right. Right.
But I don't know. I mean, we'll see. And we got some big shows coming up here soon. So
A lot of big shows. If you want to see
gotta
us,
hope.
you know, give you our opinion on those, feel free to click the subscribe button. That's a
Yeah,
segue.
hopefully it's not us just bitching and complaining the whole
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have some gleaming reviews for one of these Stranger Things or
Top Gun,
a little
Obi
Obi Wan
Wan,
Kenobi.
a little Obi Wan Kenobi.
We can only hope.
We can only hope. All right. Well, thanks, Gordon, and thanks everybody for tuning in.
Yeah.
Peace.